It's an age-old fact of life, but as the saying goes, nothing lasts forever. The same rules apply to video game franchises though, as some of the characters that we grew up with and loved have found themselves buried away in the pits of time. So with franchises like Burnout, Spyro, and even Toe Jam Earl rumored or reported to be making a comeback, today I thought I'd pay tribute to those forgotten pixels by presenting to you my top 10 game franchises worth reviving. Now this is just my personal opinion, so if you don't see your favorites on this list, then chances are I haven't played through the franchise. So please, comment down below your favorites, as I'd love to see your opinions. But anyway, let's take a look. Kicking off my list, we have the classic known as F-Zero. Now, I'll admit, out of all my choices on this list, I've spent the least amount of time with the F-Zero series. So, with so many great franchises to choose from, why did I include it? Well, personally, as a launch title for the Super Nintendo, I feel that F-Zero was ahead of its time, and can appreciate the fast-paced, high-octane action that it provided gamers worldwide. Today, we haven't seen a new entry into the franchise since 2004, and even then it was exclusive to Japan. These days, we have similar series such as Wipeout and Redout that have seen moderate success. And with Nintendo dominating the kart racer genre, I'd be curious to see them try their hand on a more serious and edgy racer by bringing back the F-Zero franchise into the modern era of gaming. F-Zero would be perfect on the go with the Switch, with some excellent online play and a campaign mode featuring the infamous Captain Falcon. Yet for now, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what Nintendo has in mind for the franchise in the future. As a 90s kid, it's hard to forget the console wars from that decade. Yet while many gamers were focused on whether Mario or Sonic was better, PC gaming was experiencing growing success. Among the great PC characters of the 90s stood Jazz Jackrabbit, and his games featured some quick side-scrolling action, and he was basically Sonic with a gun. Sadly, after the success of two PC titles, the series eventually faded into obscurity after a failed reboot on the Game Boy Advance in 2002, which basically took away the initial attitude of the character and didn't sit well with fans. That said, I'd love to see this feisty green rabbit return to his roots in a modern pixelated wonderland, with the aid of original developer Epic Games, who are responsible for titles such as Gears of War and Fortnite. If they put their heart into it, I have no doubt they could orchestrate a successful jazzy comeback that could entertain fans both young and old. Next up, we have Breath of Fire. Now, I know that back in 2016, Capcom released the MMO Breath of Fire 6 exclusively in Japan for PC and mobile devices, yet in my opinion, while the art style was nice, it wasn't a true successor to the series. And quite frankly, fans felt the same way since it performed so poorly that the servers shut down in 2017. So in that regard, we haven't seen a true Breath of Fire title since the 5th entry in the series, which hit the US back in 2003 on the PlayStation 2. You see, with major mainstream RPG developers pulling away from turn-based combat in their games, Capcom could capitalize on this by reviving the series and bringing back that fighting style that many of us know and love. I'll always have fond memories of the stories and their characters on the Super Nintendo, and whether a new entry in the series would involve 2D sprites or be filled with full-fledged 3D environments, in my opinion, the world desperately needs more Breath of Fire. Okay, so bear with me here as this is definitely the oddest choice on my list. However, while brainstorming, I knew I wanted to include at least one game here that was created with children in mind. And when I was younger, I spent hours on point-and-click PC games by Humongous Entertainment. These included franchises like Freddy Fish, Pajama Sam, and Putt Putt, and admittedly, they were a bit on the cornier side, but that's part of what made them so great. If I had to pick just one though, the Spy Fox series is where I spent most of my time. Spy Fox was a cartoon-like animal parody of James Bond, and I remember it was so much fun going around, collecting clues, using silly gadgets, and just clicking stuff. The games even featured alternate sequences, so the gameplay was different each time you played. While the series featured 2 sequels, a port on Nintendo Wii, and can be purchased today on Steam, we haven't seen a new adventure from this Sly Kitsune since 2001. However, with all the violent games out these days, I wouldn't mind my kids being able to experience a fresh take on Spy Fox, so here's hoping that dream can become a reality. Growing up, I had nothing but the fondest memories of playing the Sega Genesis and PS1 titles from the hardcore arcade motorcycle racing series known as Road Rash. As a kid who generally followed all the rules, this was a game that allowed me to be a pixelated rebel as I hacked and slashed my way through other bikers and even attempted to outrun the cops. That's right, this was the equivalent of GTA before GTA even existed, and it was awesome. Not to mention the Sega CD and PS1 versions featured some killer music to accompany the thrills on screen. So the question is, what happened? Okay, to be fair, there was a point in time where Electronic Arts actually created quality games without microtransactions. However, sadly, the final entries didn't do too well with critics, and ultimately led to the downfall of the series. Yet there may be a slither of hope, since in the past, EA affiliate Criterion, who created the popular Burnout racing series, has expressed interest in a Road Rash game. Whether or not this comes to fruition has yet to be determined, but still, one can only hope that we will once more get behind the wheels of those fast-paced rage machines. At number 5, we have Mystical Ninja. Now, at first, I never played the originals for the Super Nintendo, as my introduction to the series was from the first Nintendo 64 entry. Looking back, this may have been the most obscure Nintendo game that I personally owned as a kid, since the series wasn't as well known in America as it is in Japan. But whenever I showed it to my friends, they greatly enjoyed the gameplay. Oh, and the soundtrack for a Nintendo 64 title is really good. Now that time has passed, I've been able to play a few more from the series, packed with glorious Japanese culture. However, the gaming community hasn't seen a new title since the franchise attempted to bring Goemon to the Nintendo DS back in 2005 exclusively in Japan. It's been over 10 years since then, and I think with hardware out now like the Switch or the PlayStation 4, the time is right for Konami to dig deep and pull this fun and quirky franchise out of retirement. Whether they go back to their roots as a side-scroller or try an open-world environment similar to Super Mario Odyssey, this is a series that could surely see great success under the right circumstances. Just listen to that awesome music. That is the sound of one of, if not the best, beat-em-up franchises of all time, and that is Sega's Streets of Rage. When I was younger, I didn't personally own a Sega Genesis, but I had friends who did, and I remember having so much fun beating up baddies co-op style to the sounds of some funky beats. Originally, the series was successful enough to warrant 2 sequels, and the legend goes that there was a 4th one in the works for the Sega Saturn, but unfortunately, plans changed and the game ended up taking a different direction, becoming Fighting Force instead. While the series has seen various ports over the years, we haven't received a true fresh take on the franchise since Streets of Rage 3 back in 1994. On the other hand, this may be due to the fact that the entire beat-em-up genre as a whole has severely dwindled in popularity over the years. Still, to this day, many fans swear by the franchise as being one of the most memorable from their childhood, which is why I truly believe that a successful comeback could be achieved if developed and marketed properly using the Streets of Rage name. Rare, in its heyday, produced a lot of the classics that my generation hold dear to their hearts. Titles such as Diddy Kong Racing, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye, Battletoads, and the list goes on. Aside from Donkey Kong though, I'd easily say that Banjo-Kazooie was the game I spent the most time on from Rare's esteemed catalog during my youth. There was something to be said about the 3D platforming magic of the originals, yet unfortunately, Rare wasn't able to muster up that same vibe when they released Nuts and Bolts on the Xbox 360 back in 2008. Since then, everyone's favorite derpy bear and sharp-witted bird sidekick have remained hidden in the depths of gaming history. Furthermore, it seems a bit unlikely that a revival will happen since most of the original programming team have moved on and created what some consider to be a spiritual successor in Yooka-Laylee. Still, despite all of that, one can only hope that all of the golden pieces of the puzzle will fit together and we'll someday see a return of the feisty duo. If you grew up playing RPGs in the 90s, chances are that Chrono Trigger will be on your list, and for good reason too. Developed by Squaresoft, who were known for their Final Fantasy titles at the time, Chrono Trigger captivated its audiences with a compelling and original story, beautiful music, graphics that were great for the time, and a solid fighting system. Despite spawning one sequel and producing a number of ports, with the most recent being on mobile devices in 2012, the team behind the game haven't been able to push out a brand new adventure in the series since the PlayStation 1 exclusive Chrono Cross back in 2000. With so many ports of the original, it's clear that they are aware of the popularity of the franchise, so why not capitalize on that? Unfortunately, it seems like there may be conflicts of interest and disagreements behind the scenes that are interfering with the very concept of a new entry. Still, for a game series about time, one may be able to take comfort with the phrase, "time heals everything," and so hopefully in time, the creators can put aside their differences and give the fans the game that they've been asking for many years. Topping off my list, we have Scunny Games by Copysoft. No, I'm just kidding. Yet, all jokes aside, for me there's been no franchise I've wanted to make a return more than Capcom's Mega Man Legends. Having fully played through and beaten the original two games on the PlayStation 1 multiple times, Legends was a series that combined two of my favorite things, Mega Man and RPGs. However, it wasn't your typical turn-based combat, as you were allowed to roam around freely, similar in style to an action RPG like Zelda. With the most recent entry in the series being released all the way back in 2002, it's been over 15 years since fans have had a shot at a fresh entry into the franchise. There have been some close calls with the development of Mega Man Legends 3 for the 3DS, but sadly, these attempts came to a halt in 2011. Ultimately, it's hard to say if we'll ever see a new game in the franchise, despite characters such as Tronbon and the Servbots making cameo appearances in other Capcom franchises, such as Marvel vs. Capcom and Dead Rising. However, should plans move forward and a new game actually get developed, fans of the Blue Bomber, myself included, will be absolutely thrilled. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode, but be sure to like, share, and maybe even subscribe if you enjoyed the video for more content like this in the future. But I'm That Bald Gamer, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.